Hi guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Titus. I'm on the phone with my bubbas today. Thomas is on the other line, and we are gonna get into some questions. There was a lot of questions that were asked, that I asked, and you guys responded to on Instagram about a bunch of different things. Well, today I went through them, I was rummaging through them, and I honestly kind of forgot about them. Part of it was for something else, something we're gonna be doing that's pretty big here within the next year, but I'm gonna keep that under wraps. But we did want to take a lot of those questions and answer them here on the podcast, which I think is a great platform for that. So anyways, if you guys haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, you guys have been doing awesome with that for the MVM show. So you can go on YouTube, type in the MVM show, and we have a channel there. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers on there. And if you like it, long form video or to listen on there, you can do that. But anyways, let's get started. So I'm going to talk today about getting the birds to come in. That's all of our dreams and hopes, right? As duck hunters, is getting the birds to come in. But there's a few things that I wrote down just quickly. We may miss some, or Thomas may think of some that I didn't write down here. But these are just the right out the gate. For those of you that are newer to hunting, have only been hunting a year or two. Because here's the thing: as long as you hunt, you're always gonna be asking yourself that question. That's what you got to do when you're out there hunting. You're going to say, how can I get these birds to come in? So, but these are things we'll talk about from experience. So I don't know, Thomas, do you want to go first? You can go over whatever. Maybe it's not something you had written down. I had written down, but something you just kind of thought off the top of your head.
Yeah, well, talking about getting birds to come in, with any kind of hunting, the hunt starts way before you're actually planning on pulling the trigger. I mean, you could be the best caller, best shooter, hitting the best, all the above. But if you're not putting yourself where the birds are, and I know we're going to talk about that later, but really hunting and getting birds to come in starts with scouting, because a big thing with scouting is when you find the birds are already patterned and are already planning on coming to that location. So that, that really cuts down a lot of work on your part as a hunter, because sometimes you're not able to hunt the X, for multiple reasons. But when you have to have those hunts where you're trying to pull birds, or sometimes people call it traffic birds, from where the birds are already planning on going, um, then that's when you're kind of using different tactics to try to pull those birds over to you and try to get those birds to come into you. But to me, you know, ideally, the best thing you can do is spend the time scouting
Mm-hmm.
and putting yourself in the best location that you can.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is what helps, is going to help the most in getting birds to come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I
What do you
agree
think?
100%. If you're on the X, that's just, you could almost not have any decoys. Not have a greatest hide, you know. I've been in
Right.
those situations.
And I mean, every area we've hunted is a little different in certain ways. You got different landscapes, different times of year, um, different weather and all that. But like I said, that's the most important thing to me, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and sometimes there's really no way to do that. So on the flip side of that, that's where we'll go into some of this other stuff, because sometimes, like if you plan a place that's a lottery or resi, most of these California refuges, you can't scout. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really, I know, who knows who asked this question, where they were
Mm-hmm.
from or whatever, but there's some places, man, it's a big upper hand. I mean, out of state
Mm-hmm.
and some public land that's not a refuge that you can hunt 7 days a week, that's a big
Mm-hmm.
upper hand. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
number one goal. But if it's any of
Well, I mean, like I said, you just have to do what you can where you can. Like you
Mhm,
said, some places you can have a lot more freedom and liberty to scout.
mhm,
Here in California, it's not like you can really do that unless you're, as far as refuges, unless you're on a hunt day and you're out hunting. So that's going to come down to time spent either as a hunt slash scouting trip, where you go into a new place you've never been, and possibly looking for areas where you see birds going, and then you can make adjustments, and um, get closer to where the birds want to be.
Yeah. Our biggest thing, like if we're in reference to hunting a refuge, is if you're hunting in the morning and maybe you miss the spot, you're scouting while you're hunting. If you've seen birds dump in right then and there, if you're in free roam, or if you have the opportunity to move, then make the move. Don't wait till you see, because we've done that before. Like, okay, there one bird goes down over there, and then another bird goes down, and you're like, okay, maybe 5 more birds go over there, and then we'll move. So you can't just pick up and move after one bird goes, but we're doing that a lot. And sometimes we'll have a dead morning hunt, but we watched all day, and then we moved and hunted the afternoon and had a killer hunt,
Yeah, sometimes it can feel like, man, I wasted a hunt, or I wasted a morning, or this and that. But you're not really wasting if you're
gathering intel.
Yeah, paying attention, gathering intel, watching. If maybe it's just a day where it's literally dead and there literally is no birds. Or maybe you're seeing, hey, I've been seeing birds go over that way on the other side of the refuge, or I've been seeing them go over there, So, yeah.
For sure. Yeah, 100% agree. And then there's other things like at other refuges that are all blinds, and some refuges will show the bird numbers coming out of that blind. So that's just common sense to me. You can go there and see, oh, here's the numbers for this blind, and how many birds they shoot. So that's common sense. Oh, this blind averages 3.5 birds every hunt day. So I mean, that's there ain't much for us to say about that. We're kind of more referencing like free roam too, but you got to take all of that into account as well. We could probably talk about that forever, but I don't know. Is there anything that would help refuge hunters for that? Because again, we do talk about scouting and stuff, but like trying to dial in for those refuge guys. I mean, that's just part of the scouting is the hunting. You can't pre-scout sometimes in a lot of those places. I would say a majority of them in California.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, depending if we're specifically talking about refuge and blinds, I mean, the most, like you said, most obvious is going off blind numbers. One thing you gotta remember too, looking at blind numbers, there's a lot that goes into that too, because you do want to look at the most current blind numbers, but also you want to pay attention to
the history,
the history and what weather they had, the previous hunt day, because I've seen a lot of guys that's never been, and I know this has happened everywhere. There's been a lot of guys that will pick a blind that's not as good just based off of the previous hunt numbers. And whereas there's a blind that they could have gotten that's got a history that it's always good. You know what I mean? So that's something. As far as free roam in the areas, that's what we're kind of talking about. Is it's kind of tough going to a new spot blindly, and that's when we typically try to be in a more mobile setup, maybe not pack as many decoys, not be as heavy, where it wouldn't be as hard for us to move if we need to,
Yeah, and these like if you're paying attention at all, if you don't have as much experience, these are nuggets right here. And I've thought about some of the stuff sometimes we share, and I've never questioned it like, oh, we shouldn't be saying this or telling this or whatever. That's not how we are, because here's the thing. If people listen to this that are newer and don't have like a mentor, and we can be that, then you can be less or you could be more ethical in the field. You can get your birds faster and get out. Like it really, in the end, I don't know why guys get jealous or mad or say don't talk about that, because in the end it benefits everybody. If you drew a nice lottery or a blind number for, like, let's just say one that it's all blinds, like a Refuge that's all blinds, and you got one of the top blinds, giving these little nuggets that, Thomas is giving, I'm giving, they'll help you get your birds and get out quicker, which means me in the sweat line waiting for you to get out gets me in there quicker. So we're all together. It's not, you're hurting yourself by not getting people that don't know what they're doing standing there longer and holding up spots. It really just benefits everybody. So some people get all worked up about that, but in the end, it really comes back and helps all of us. So I guess we beat that one a little bit. Let's go into calling. So getting birds to come in now specifically, like let's say you're in a spot now, getting them to come in. If you're on the X, sometimes, like I said, none of this stuff matters, but a lot of times you're not. Thomas, how many times, be honest, out of 10 times, let's just say 10 hunts, how many times out of those 10 hunts do you think you're on the X and the birds are stupid?
Oh, maybe 2 if I'm lucky.
Yeah, maybe if you're lucky. Exactly.
If I'm lucky.
Literally.
Probably 1 out of 10 average.
Yeah.
I'd say.
If you were going out of 100, you'd probably say how many hunts out of 100 hunts? Like 10. I don't even 10.
I would just say 10. I
Yeah.
would say 10% is a decent number.
Yeah. So
maybe you're close. But I mean, when you're literally on the dot, I mean
it's a whole different,
a wonderful thing.
It is. And you don't got to call. You don't got to, your decoys almost don't matter. I mean,
Yeah, when you're on the X, you're the best caller anybody's ever been.
Yeah, exactly. So now we're pretend we didn't get to scout, or maybe, we scouted, but maybe we're not on the X. Okay. So let's get into the details that, like, okay, now we're hunting and birds are kind of everywhere. Let's get into the details, like what can I do to help them come in? And calling is one of them. But let me say this, there's multiple ways you can take this. Calling, let's go into this side of it, calling more or calling less. So one thing you got to do, and this is the hard part at the beginning, is watch the reaction of the birds. You hear us say the term flare. Well, let's say this bird's doing the steady wing beat, right? Wing beat. And they're flapping their wings and they're coming right at you. And you're just, you're just calling like crazy and they don't stop. Obviously, they don't break wing beak. They don't even act like it's bothering them. You're probably okay to keep calling, maybe softly as they get quieter, right? But if you hit that call and they're in the steady wing beat looking, and you hit that call and they flutter their wings and change direction or climb or act goofy, right then, that you better lay off that call. It's probably too late in that situation, but you really got to be observant of how the birds act and react to your calls,
Yeah.
And you got to base that, like, sometimes we've got roused before, but like, well, you guys aren't calling, but did we need to? Because the birds were coming in, we were shooting them. And it wasn't because we didn't do it because we didn't want to. It was because we didn't need to. We tried the calling and it wasn't working. It was flaring birds, or birds were avoiding that area. So the moment you get quiet and kind of, maybe even if it's just a light little small, like little chuckle or one quack, but hitting the hell call and the Hail Mary and all that stuff, and it's not going to cut it sometimes.
We've been in situations on both ends of the spectrum. I've been in, I've hunted where it seems like if you made a sound, they didn't want it. And I've been in situations where if you didn't call hard till you shot, you weren't going to get a shot. So, I mean, that's where it really comes, like you said, that's where it comes back to, you need to watch the bird. And if you're calling and you can't get any birds to commit, just try not calling, or try calling, less or softer, or at different times, read the bird and all that. I mean, you can really just play with that. To me, calling isn't always necessary. Calling is a tool to help. But if it's not helping, then why waste your time calling? You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times it's good to, maybe if you're not on the X, let the birds know you're there, help them to see you. Because sometimes I feel like you can set up and maybe the direction the birds are flying from, or just whatever. Maybe the birds don't have very good visibility of where you're at, and maybe they fly, where you can see them, but maybe they don't fly exactly where they're taking a look at your decoys.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, using the call is a good way for them to notice you, maybe check it out. Maybe if they're slightly interested but don't really commit, you can give them a little more and see if that helps and keeps them circling or interested. And if it is, then maybe that lets you know right there, hey, they like it, they're not
Mm-hmm.
flaring. Or take it the other way. You hit them once and maybe they look at you, and maybe you hit them again and they just bug out really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the next time you hit them, let them know you're there, and then you shut up and see what they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So really, that's really I can't think of the word I'm trying to find right now. Situational,
It is. Oh, it's so big. All these are situational. All these things, besides getting on the X, I mean, like, that's like winning the lottery. But like everything else we're going to talk about is totally situational.
And another thing always keep in mind too is weather. On a windy day, they're not going to hear you as well as a dead calm day. You know what I mean? So you can give it a lot more volume, and you're not going to be blasting them. You know what I mean? But when there's not any wind at all, you don't have to be as aggressive. So,
and I guarantee there's been way too many times we've called too loud, meaning we weren't thinking we were loud, but there was no wind, and it just echoes across the water. And I've heard sometimes, like, listening back to videos or standing across the way while you call or Travis calls while I'm going over somewhere and coming back. I'm like, man, that is super loud. And if you hear ducks, they are not. I don't feel like they're as loud as the calls are sometimes, to be honest with you. When you hear ducks, like sometimes they'll land like 100 yards away, and you can hear them over there. Wah, 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 wah. I'm like, it's loud, but it's not as loud as sometimes we can get on the calls. Just volume wise, not talking about what you're doing when you call, and just the volume. Period. But yeah, that's a good one too, with the wind and the calmness. That makes a huge difference too, and just honestly watching the birds and learning from watching the reaction. I remember, and I think a lot of people that are newer will understand this. I don't know if you've ever thought this way, Thomas, but I remember when I would see a duck, I was really just seeing, okay, that's a duck. And I wasn't really like focused on the little things and the details. It's like, oh, there's a bird, grab my gun and shoot at it. Otherwise, now it's like I'm looking at, is that a drake or is it a hen? How is their wings reacting? Are they turning? Are they coming right at me? Are they like looking interested? Can you tell by their body language? Are they kind of doing a slow roll in? Like you can tell that they're interested. Or are they just buzzing sometimes? Where it's like, we've done it so many times. They're moving so fast, and they have their mindset. You can just tell by their body language they are not even one bit interested in your area. So you really got to make yourself, because I know the one thing hard for newer hunters is identifying. Like, you can maybe tell what a duck is, but identifying what it is way out there in advance, and then trying to get a feel of the body language of that bird. So
yeah, because if you're not really reading the body language, you might get discouraged at these 3 birds that you call at that don't give you the time of day.
yeah.
Well, those birds were never going to even be interested in your spot anyway. It doesn't matter what you did. A bird that's got a consistent wing beat and is just flying in a straight line, he's not really looking for a spot to land. A bird that's kind of flying slower with a slower wing beat, maybe a little inconsistent, you can watch his head move around. He's kind of just looking for a place, looking for a spot where he wants to go. Some look like they're more trying to land than others, but you'd just be able to tell.
Yeah, totally. I got distracted. I was gonna say one more thing about the calling, but those are pretty good tips things for sure. Force yourself to identify and watch body language, and like Tom said, wind, calmness. Those are great things. Those are all things from experience. They sound common sense when someone goes ahead and just tells you about them. It's like, oh yeah, but you know, really you wouldn't know those unless you've been there and done that. So there's more things we could go into that too, but we're just kind of giving a few little things of each one. There's a ton more. We probably could spend a whole podcast on each one of these separately, but we're not just gonna try to get some good ones out there. Decoys. Actually, I know what it was I was going to say about the calling. I was going to say one more thing. I think, Thomas, you and I call lighter and less than most people do. And because of that, but like you said, in one situation, we had to call the ducks. It took us a while to realize it because we don't call heavy, because I don't believe that you need to do that. But there was a few situations we've been in the last couple of years, you had to call in their face so hard or they turned, and then so once you called
they
hard,
seem to
hard,
like it.
Yes.
and I mean like
loud hard as you could.
and frequent, like just on it, no stopping, whether you're just quacking or you're doing chuckle or anything.
So you're worn out. Literally, I've never been so tired of calling as a few of those times I can think back of. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But because we're lighter callers and not heavy callers, it took us a while to figure that out, But all right, decoys. There's a lot of things we could go over here. This is huge. Now, and what I'm going to jump into first is motion. Motion is so big, and I told Thomas we use those Higdon pulsators a lot. Thomas bought the first ones, I believe, didn't you? And then I bought a couple, and we use those a ton. The only thing I would say, just be careful on that, is if it's a really calm, quiet day, which is when you want motion, the birds can hear those sometimes, and some people say, well, if they hear those, then they're already dead, which I don't really agree with. Birds can hear so good, and we're going to go into something about that next. Ducks are so smart, they see so good, and they can hear very good. And sometimes when it's really calm and quiet like that, they can hear that quite a ways off. I know birds have flared off, but I also have seen them come right in the decoys too, when it's the spot they want. But what I was going to push more, if you're not lazy like I am sometimes, is the motion ducks. We've preached that for I don't know how long on this channel and podcast, but really motion ducks, me and Thomas were talking about it a while back, where we need to get back to using that again, because not that the pulsators aren't good, because they definitely have their time and place, and they're an awesome tool, and they work. And I mean, for the most part, I would take them every time. But on those real quiet days, and maybe I feel like birds get acclimated to the pulsators as well, but they don't ever get acclimated to the motion ducks, because when you got 4 to 7 ducks that are like a big jerk string, I mean, that's about the realest looking thing you can get, like birds swimming in the water. And so if you don't have that, if you don't have some type of a jerk string motion set up like that in your spread, you definitely need to get one for sure.
Yeah. I mean, jerk strings have been around for a long time, right? That motion ducks, I think, looks just one step better than a traditional jerk string, because it's, it puts them in a more realistic placement. But I mean, shoot, you could spend so much time on decoys, but starting with wherever you're hunting. I mean, try to look at birds in your area, what they do, how they how they sit on the water, whether you're hunting fields or water. I tend to always think about water because we hunt water more, but try to look at how the birds stack up, and that goes back to scouting. Maybe birds are more spread out. Maybe birds are real tight together. Maybe they're further out in open water. Maybe they're closer to the tules or closer to the bank. Just try to mimic that. And if it's not working, maybe try changing it. You know what I mean? But motion, if you don't have some kind of motion, and there's no wind, so your traditional decoys aren't moving, changing direction, any of that. I mean, I don't even like to hunt if there's no motion. I
Oh, I
mean, I
know.
just feel
It
like
feels like it's
it's
a
just,
waste, huh?
what's the point?
Mm,
Yeah, it looks so
terrible.
obvious that those are number. I mean, you can have the best Dakota, Avery, not Avery. I mean GHG, Avian X. I don't care what your decoy brand is. If they're just sitting still, I mean, it's terrible. So, um, the cheapest thing is a jerk string. I mean, if
Hmm.
nothing else, buy a jerk string to at least get some kind of movement on the water.
Well,
Um,
you're better off with one bird on a jerk string with movement than 60 decoys that are stagnant, in my
yeah,
opinion. And on a
yeah, I
winless
agree.
day, on a winless day.
On the absolute winless day, yeah,
Hmm.
I agree
Hmm.
totally. Anyways, yeah, I mean, there's multiple options for emotion, but get one at least. I personally, I would say I like water motion better than spinners. But I definitely am not against spinners either.
Hmm.
But I mean,
The other time and place.
you gotta have one.
Hmm.
At least have one. I do not go hunting ever without one or the other or both. It's just, unless it's
And
gonna be like a
I
20
would
mile an
pick
hour wind.
I'd pick the water motion over the spinner for any day.
I would definitely pick water motion. Um,
Unless,
yeah,
like you said, unless it's windy. And I'm talking about windless day.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I always like having both with me. If I only had was able to have one, I would have some water motion. But definitely both. I like to play with the spinner probably more than water. I will always have water motion, whether it's a jerk string, whether it's the pulsators, or um, what's the other one? You know, I kind of got away. We kind of got away from anything else because Titus was talking about the noise on the pulsator, and that to me is the quietest battery powered motion decoy I've found. And there's a lot of ones that look really good. I mean, there's swimmers. There's those the birds that look like they're dabbling. You know, there's multiple options, but the thing I never liked about any of them is they're so loud.
Mm-hmm.
And if I need a motion decoy, that means there's no wind. That means it's quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be quiet. Whatever it is, it's got to be quiet because when I'm using motion decoys, it's going to be quiet out. So,
I'll give you guys a heads up right now. The one that swims from Higdon is very loud, and I would not advise that for those quiet, calm days. In fact, I got rid of mine. It was just, I mean,
mm-hmm,
it was loud
mm-hmm,
for me,
yeah.
honestly.
So with the pulsators, I feel like in the best case scenario, the birds like at least a little bit of calling, and I feel like that can help cover up that sound of the pulsator. If you're absolutely no calling, it does have a little bit of sound. I still will use them. I would still use them every time. Um, I mean, unless you're just gonna have a bunch of jerk strings or something. But I don't feel like they flare the birds. Um, but I mean, you can't beat a jerk string as far as how quiet it is.
I've seen them flare birds, but I think it's been birds we've hunted and seen them before and got shot at too.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I feel. But I mean, regardless, I always have them with me, like you said. You can always pull them, if you think that, and that's with everything. With going kind of more into decoys themselves, it's like we sometimes will start, and we learn stuff over the years, so we kind of know where we go, how much we're going to use. But there's been times we've had 3 dozen decoys out, and like, what are they not liking? And then you pull it down to like 6, and just pull them up, put them back in the bag, and get hidden again, and all of a sudden now they're wanting to land. So it's just, you have to play with it. There's no perfect answer. People always like, do a decoy video, like how you set them up. It's like, we never have a,
Yeah.
we set them up and
Yeah.
we're
Well,
talking to each other the whole time. Like me and you're like,
if it's
we're probably gonna move these because we'll be like, should I put this over here? Like, we're at the point last year. Me and Thomas were like, just throw them out, and like we both know we're gonna move them. You know it
yeah.
for the most part.
Well,
You know.
well, that's kind of funny. Yeah, because little history, starting hunting with Travis, and Travis is the biggest decoy mover there probably is.
Mm. He's
And
not like he used to
whenever
be. I'll say that.
whenever us three go hunt together, I don't even say one word about the decoys because I know you guys are just gonna move them anyway. Even if you guys put them out, you're gonna move them anyway. So it don't. I'm just like, whatever. I I'm totally for adjusting decoys, but me and you have actually gotten to arguments before about where we're putting decoys, and then we put them out,
And
and we
we
end up
mo-
moving them anyways. So I kind of just came to the point where if you want them a certain way, let's put them a certain way. If I want them a certain way, whatever. Like we don't really even
we
really
don't do that
argue about
anymore.
that
No.
anymore, because either way, it's not. You're probably going to move, so it's not like you know exactly where
Mm-hmm.
they want them to be. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I feel like it don't even matter. I mean, sometimes if birds aren't responding well, obviously that's the time to move them. If
Mm-hmm.
birds are coming in, don't touch them. You know what
Exactly.
I mean?
Uh,
Travis, I know, has done that before where he's like, I think we should do this. It's like, dude, we just shot 4 birds. Like,
mm-hmm.
why are you wanting to move the
Mm-hmm.
decoys? So if it works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
If it
Yeah.
ain't working, make some adjustments.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it would be stupid to not to if birds aren't responding well, to not be willing to adjust your decoys. That's the definition of insanity right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, expecting different results. So
Yeah. 100%. All right. I think we got that one. Now, quiet. This is not a normal one people talk about because I know a lot of this stuff gets beat to death, but this one is not. I don't think I ever hear people talk about this one, and it drives me bonkers. And that is be quiet. Like, be quiet. And I'm not talking about calling, I'm talking about talking to each other or
yeah,
communicating or whatever. Birds can hear very, very good. They can hear you talk, and I'm not talking about rejoicing after you drop a bird right in the decoys or whatever. Like, yeah, doing your hoopla stuff. But I'm talking about you don't see a bird in the sky
and
and
you're just talking loud.
just blah blah blah. Because how many times have you got backdoored by a bird that didn't know it was coming? If you really want to be successful, if you want to be out there and you want to kill something, you don't want to just sit there all day for the fun of it. Really, really keep it down because birds can hear very good. Like, again, it goes back to a windless, quiet day. Your voice. I've been standing out on the bank 400 yards from some guys, and you can just hear them. They're not yelling, but they're just like talking like me and you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, dude, and I see birds working around. There's that you just can't do that. Like, what kind
Well,
of hunting do you do that? You don't do that in turkey hunting. Those guys don't do that when they're sitting in a deer stand up in a tree. You don't do that. If you're hunting, be quiet. And I hear so many duck hunters around us when we're hunting talking, oh, Bill, Bob, move that, do this, do that. It's like, that is not going to help you.
yeah.
Whisper.
Well, I mean, it's more frustrating to people around because you're really messing their hunt up too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're 300-400 yards away, you're just making the birds want to go to a different area. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's how you want to do, I mean, hey, that's you. Go ahead. But it's
Yeah.
just kind
But
of jacked up to the other guys around you because you're
yes
really
and no,
messing their
though.
people up.
Yes and no, because I don't want no one around me doing that. So I'm not going to say, yeah, if that's what you want to do, do it. It's like, no, don't do that. Like, if you want to be successful, if you don't care about etiquette, well, at least if you want success, then, keep it down. But here was one of my other illustrations that I know drives you nuts too, is like, birds are working. Now we actually have birds working. You can see them, and guys are all in this loud and tone of a voice. Here they come, guys. Here they come. Here they come. Whack, 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 whack. Here they come. Get ready. Right on your right side. 60 yards away. It's like, if you are talking that loud when the bird's working, don't expect to put that bird down. Like, I don't even grasp that. Like, don't talk. Like, whisper if you need to talk, and tell your buddy, here they come on the right side, But people are talking. You can go all over YouTube and see that, all over it. You can see it all the way. Everybody, tons of people do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's because they're different locations and the birds just like talking, or I don't
Yeah.
know. It just baffles me. I'm like, even if they're not reacting to it, anything you hunt, you don't do that with. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why duck hunters are so bad at that. They're so
Mm-hmm.
loud to me. It's such an important thing. You're hunting. You're trying to trick a prey into your set, or to your hide, or to your deer stand. You know, like, just, shh, tone it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whisper. There's some people I know they don't know how to whisper. They literally said, I can't. Like, how do you? If you can't whisper, don't talk. So, lastly, unless you want to add something after this too, is totally fine. But last thing I had written down was hide. Yeah, you can start that one out if you want.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you can't be seen once you're seen. I mean, birds have the best view, a bird's eye view, literally. So, I think something we struggle with in California is getting overhead cover. Um, a lot of areas we hunt in is just tulies, so you really don't have great overhead cover. Some tulies are quite a bit taller than others, but um, you know when you're hunting in timber, or maybe the Midwest where you have trees that grow on the banks and you're hunting the river or something like that, you can get great overhead cover, and it's awesome. It's so fun to hunt in.
Yeah.
But you know that's just going to be wherever you're hunting. Obviously, if you have to make a blind, don't skimp on the blind. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's worth spending the time to have a better hide, because
Mm-hmm.
that's going to take that question out of your head. It's going to take it off the table.
Yep.
If birds aren't committing, if birds are flaring, or if they're not just coming in, if you don't have a good hide, you're going to be like, man, are they seeing us? Are they
Yep.
seeing us? You're going to ask that multiple times.
Yep. When you know in the
So
back of your mind, that's probably what it is.
right. So spend the time, or move locations, do whatever you got to do to get that thought, that possibility off the table and out of your mind, where okay, they're not seeing me.
Mm-hmm.
Now maybe it's the decoys, or maybe it's the calling, or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff, you got enough to worry about without having to think or question, like, are they seeing me?
Mm-hmm.
This or that. So,
Been there, done that.
yeah, multiple times.
And really, you might have said it, but it's the number one priority, really.
Mhm,
If you're not
mhm.
hidden, it's
Right.
you know
Yeah.
what I'm a big
So,
fan of. I know we use this a lot with the toolies, is shadows.
mhm,
That's such. If you don't really have some fancy hide, getting in the shadows of like the toolies and stuff is so huge.
mhm.
The sun's in the bird's eyes.
Same, same for pits. There's a lot of guys. I mean, there's a lot of pit blind hunting in California, and I mean, pits, I have a love-hate relationship. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's like they're so open and so obvious. I mean, whenever I've hunted pits, we try to try to cover up the best you can, as far as maybe building something up on the back side of you where it actually puts a shadow over the pit,
Mm-hmm.
or some kind of something, whether it's a dead tree branch, or it's some tumbleweeds, or maybe a
Even like a
camo
couple,
covered.
couple stakes
uh,
and a camo net. Those are
yeah.
huge.
Stuff like that, that could totally change your day. Like,
Mm-hmm. It
that
will.
could be the difference between five birds and one bird. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So those are big things to think about. um, I know it's kind of tough, because sometimes you might not know whether you're hunting a pit or free roam or a blind. But so sometimes you got to kind of pack extra in the truck, and then based off of what options you got, decide, okay, this is what we're going to take because
Mm-hmm.
we're hunting a pit today. Or, hey, we can leave our seats, we can leave everything in the truck because we're hunting a blind.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that you got to do.
Yeah, 100%. That's the difference between success and failure. Jake's gotten really good at. He has a little setup with some stakes and some camo netting, and it's just an astronomical difference. He said they weren't shooting nothing. We know this, but just to give someone else as a reference, he said they weren't shooting nothing. There's 4 of them in a pit, him and his boys, him, Paul David, and that was the first time I think he threw up the stakes in that little net, which wasn't much. It's probably like a 2-foot tall thing, and just kind of wrapped it around. And he said they were coming. He goes, literally, they were coming right in the decoys. It went from them just passing over and not getting any to shooting 4 limits, quick. So that's not much effort. A couple stakes in a net. I mean, you can get that on Amazon. You can get the stakes for $5-10. You can get the net for $10. So yeah. Sounds obvious, and some of it is, and then sometimes it's just like, yeah, I guess I didn't think about that. But anyways, did you have anything else you wanted to add on to get birds to come in?
No, not really. I mean, that's a big start right there,
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a huge start. That's the priorities for sure. So thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate it. Again, if you ever can get a chance, go rate on Spotify, rate the podcast, what you think, or go into Apple Podcasts, rate and write a review. Appreciate everybody listening in, and hey, it's about that time to start stocking up on stuff and getting ready. Season's not too far out, so thanks for listening. We'll see you guys on the next one.